Stanford star wide receiver Elic Ayomanor is one of the more savvy, nuanced route runners and wide receivers in the 2025 NFL draft class. He looks to prove this down in Mobile at the Senior Bowl. We'll discuss this and more coming up next.
You are Locked On NFL Draft, your daily podcast covering the NFL Draft. Part of the Locked On Podcast Network, your team every day.
What's up, Locked On family? Welcome back to the Locked On NFL Draft Podcast, your daily podcast covering your favorite draft prospects, part of the Locked On Podcast Network, your team every day. I'm your boy, Damian Parson. You can find and follow me on X at DP_NFL. I'm a senior draft analyst, and thank you for making Locked On NFL Draft your first listen today and every day. Shout out for being our everydayers. And you know I got to kick the intro to Mr. LSU himself, Keith Sanchez. You can find and follow him on X at TheTalentCode. You talk to him, baby.
What's up, Locked On family? Let's get locked in. This is Keith Sanchez, 2019 national champ, man. And the other side to this dynamic duo that we like to call the Locked On NFL Draft Podcast. I want to start this podcast off by saying shout out to our everydayers. Thank you for tapping in with us each and every single day. DP, we are talking Senior Bowl wide receivers, right? We have wide receiver from Stanford, Elic Ayomanor. We have wide receiver from TCU, Savion Williams. Then we have wide receiver from Oregon, Mr. Tez Johnson. DP, I want to start this thing off with the top. Let's go to the West Coast, man, and start with Elic Ayomanor.
All right, let's do it. This episode is brought to you by PrizePicks. Go to prizepicks.com/LockedOnNFL and use the code all lowercase LockedOnNFL to win $50 instantly when you play $5. Elic Ayomanor, Stanford wide receiver. I believe he's a redshirt sophomore. 2023, he had over 1,000 yards receiving, averaged little over 16 yards per catch for 6 touchdowns. 6'2", 210-pound wide receiver for those Stanford Cardinals. Keith, this year his numbers dipped a little bit. You know, inconsistent quarterback play. He went from a little over 1,000 to 831 yards receiving. Yards per catch went down to 13 yards per catch, but he still had six receiving touchdowns. When you look at Elic Ayomanor, this was the guy we talked about at the beginning of the season. Was excited to see how the season will play out for him coming off of a strong 2023 campaign. What are your thoughts on Elic as a wide receiver, and what do you want to see from him down in Mobile?
Yeah, DP, I look at him and I see a strong number 2 for an NFL team. And I think that's what he could be. And he's listed at 6'2", 210 pounds. I think this is a guy that has a well-rounded skill set, right? I don't know if he's 4.3 speed, but you feel like he has good speed enough to push vertical. His frame allows him to be able to run some of those crossing routes, right? Also, even we talk about those key downs and those key situations where it's simply, can you win on a quick slant by crossing the DB face, right, and getting the first down? If it's 3rd and 5, can we throw a quick slant to you? Is one-on-one, and I believe he can do that, DP. I think the athletic profile combined with his strength, combined with his overall just athleticism, period, I think he's a good football player, and he's a guy who, check him out, because he can have one of those situations similar to Puka Nacua, right, to where they were on the West Coast, out of the way, nobody was paying attention to him, and then they came on strong in the NFL because they went to a good situation. And I look at plenty of NFL teams that instead of potentially, and we'll see what he does at the Senior Bowl to see the elevated draft stock, right, but I think right now, like, the conversation around him is 3rd, 4th round, right? Just as far as like the hype surrounding him. But I think he's a talented player. Like, I think he's much more talented than. So the point I was making, similar to Puka, I think the Rams drafted Puka, I don't know why I want to believe the 5th round. It was late in the draft, right? You get a guy like this as your number 2, and you don't have to draft that in the 2nd, 3rd round. You think about the Cowboys. Another team I think about is the Pittsburgh Steelers. With their wide receiver core, who everybody believes is a good. I keep saying the problem with the Steelers, they have an average wide receiver core. Guys like this round out your wide receiver core.
Yeah, I think with Elic, I agree with your sentiments, and watching him, some of the things I noted down as I was typing up my report on him, I was like, he's detailed, he's nuanced, he's savvy. Like, this is a smart football player, right? You're talking about guys that, like you said, I don't think he's gonna run 4.3. I think he's probably gonna be a 4.5 guy. But it's like, that's fast enough to win in the NFL. Like, he can stack guys. He's not gonna win like, if you're talking about putting him on the line of scrimmage, press man coverage, is he going to just immediately outrun or win the foot race? No, I don't think he's got that type of juice or explosiveness right out the gate, but like he can build up to speed. And once he stack guys, he can pull away down the field. But it's the fact of how he attacks coverages and his ability to understand leveraging, know how to attack leverages, right? How he stems his routes. I was watching, I think it was a Syracuse game, and like the corner, he was kind of a reduced split, ended up being a slot because they motioned the guy out. They had the nickel corner was kind of shaded outside of him, and he's running an outbreaker. But it's like the way that he angled his route, he stemmed him to get himself one-on-one, squared up with the DB, and then closed the airspace between the two, got up on his toes, and then broke at the break point. And he breaks at the break point with good suddenness, good urgency. I think one-on-ones are going to be big for him. You know what I mean? Because I think when I was watching him, like, I tweeted about him, somebody was like, man, like, who do you comp him to? Because I have so many different receivers that pop in my mind. And I was like, yeah, that's tough. It's tough. I'm struggling right now because I don't have a true comp for him yet. I thought about the way he moves and even the way he runs some of his routes and his releases at times. He looks like the Dontavian Wicks. You know what I mean?
I was literally about to say his name when I was talking about in regards to the Senior Bowl, right? Just that type of performance. I was literally going to say his name too.
So it's like, the way he moves, how smooth, how he you can't really speed him up. Like, this is a guy that plays at his own pace, and then he's got he's got good hands for the most part. He's got a couple. He does have some concentration drops where you just want to see him just look the ball in, secure it first before trying to turn into a runner. But I also love his ability after the catch because that's where that strength comes in at. Like, this guy, like you said, work between the hashes. I didn't think about Puka Nacua until you said it, but that's what Puka Nacua thrives. Like, Puka will run those in breakers as that tough physical receiver, catch it between defenders, shrug somebody off, get 5 to 6 yards after the catch. And if there's no safety over the top, if he shrugs off that backer or that nickel corner, now it's a house call because he's out. He's out in front of everybody, man. I think for Elic, the one-on-ones are going to be big. Just again, beating these talented DBs, Azariah Thomas, and those like this is gonna be and I texted Jim Nagy this I think it was 2 nights ago, Keith. I said, this is the best Senior Bowl roster you've ever put together. I don't know how you guys do it. I don't know how you outdo yourself, but this roster is legitimate. And if you're talking about guys that need to come in and help their stock, coming out and having a dominant week in Mobile at this Senior Bowl event, oh yeah, you're gonna help your stock with the talent that we're gonna see on both sides of the ball all around.
Yeah, no, I agree. And I look at Elic and because we talk about the 40 time and people may say, okay, how fast to see things like that. I hope that we get to the point to where we say that the 40 time matters in some capacity, but it's not, it doesn't tell all the story, right? It's probably only 20% of the story. There's literally only one route in the route tree where you just run straight, right? There's only one of them. There's only one route in the entire route tree where you do that. So you look at the other facets of his game and how he can win. I think he could be a very valuable part to an offense. And I think I'm willing to say he's going to be one of the wide receivers that surprises people because I think he's so far off of the radar, even in the draft community, let alone just the broad, NFL just changing and transitioning to the NFL draft conversation and looking for wide receivers. So Keith, I'm excited.
I want to ask you the name that came when I was watching, because I was looking at, when I'm doing comps, I'm thinking about body type, like usage, all that type of stuff. And I think back to Chris Godwin with the Tampa Bay Buccaneers coming out of Penn State. I don't think people realize Chris Godwin played outside receiver at Penn State.
Yep.
He played a lot outside, and he came into the league, and then he started dominating in the slot. And I could see some of some of those similarities with Elic Ayomanor, because when he does go into the slot, you think about, was it the Syracuse game where he had the one-hand grab in the end zone?
It was the Syracuse game.
Off the slot fade, kind of a slot double move into the fade, or and everything like that. Like, he works the slot well. He plays predominantly outside, but he does play in the slot. What do you think about that Chris Godwin trajectory for him?
Yeah, I mean, I like that one too. I think this is just a multiple guy. I think when you draft him, maybe like that's what we talked about, right? Like, can he's like the strong version of the wide receiver that you can say that you want him to play some Z, right? In the sense of the fact of, like, sometimes when we say that lends itself more, and this guy went back to school, but like the Evan Stewarts, right? The real savvy route runners that's 195 pounds say, oh no, they could play Z. I think he's the strong possession version of that. But I agree with the Chris Godwin thing is that, yeah, he can play Z, but he can play some slot too, right? Kick him inside, and he makes sure he rounds your wide receiver core out. And I remember when I was at LSU DP, and it was about, hey, how do you want your wide receivers? And it's like as multiple as possible. So then that way the NFL defense cannot just key on and know exactly where one guy is going to align or what route he's going to align, right? I want to make it as multiple as possible so the defensive coordinator doesn't have any opportunities to be able to predict what we're going to do on first, second, or third down. And I think that's the key, come to wide receivers. But DP, let's keep this thing going, man. We're about to talk about a name that I think nobody's talking about right now, right? But I think this is going to be a really good conversation. We're going to talk about TCU wide receiver Savion Williams. Yes, you want to stay tuned. This guy's 6'4", 225 pounds, and plays running back sometimes. So stay tuned for this conversation.
This is a message from our sponsor, Intuit TurboTax. Are you tired of the endless waiting, wondering, and worrying about your taxes? Well, now that's a thing of the past. You see, taxes don't need to be complicated or stressful. TurboTax is here to change the game by matching you with a TurboTax expert who can get to work on your return right away. No more waiting for answers. No more wondering if you're missing out on deductions. Whether you've got one form or 20, TurboTax experts give your taxes their undivided attention while you get real-time updates on their progress. So you can focus on what really matters. You won't have to lift a finger, and you'll get peace of mind knowing that your taxes are being handled by the pros. Ready for stress-free taxes and the most money back guaranteed? Head over to TurboTax.com today and get matched with your expert who's ready to take your taxes off your plate so you can focus on your day. Only available with TurboTax Live, full service, real-time updates only in the iOS mobile app. See guaranteed details at TurboTax.com/guaranteed. It's playoff time, and if you're like me, you want to make the most out of these final weeks of football action. That's where PrizePicks comes in. If you love football and want a chance to win real money while watching the games, PrizePicks is the place for you. It's the best way to turn your sports opinions into cash with daily fantasy player projections. With PrizePicks, you simply pick more or less on player stats like total passing yards or rushing touchdowns. And for a shot to win 1,000 times your money, you can make your picks in less than 60 seconds. And whether you're looking for a flex play to boost your payout or want to cash out quickly, PrizePicks has got you covered. And with over 10 million members and billions in winnings, it's clear that people are loving this platform. Here's a special offer for Locked On NFL listeners. Download the app today and use the code Locked On NFL to get $50 instantly after you play your first $5 lineup. Again, download the app today and use the code Locked On NFL to get $50 instantly after you play your first $5 lineup. That's PrizePicks. Run your game. Savion Williams, wide receiver, do-it-all playmaker for the TCU Horned Frogs, Keith. They have him listed at 6'5", 225 pounds. This guy on the season, receiving wise, 60 receptions, 611 yards, receiving 6 receiving touchdowns, average over 10 yards per catch. But Keith, he also added 51 carries, 322 yards rushing, and 6 rushing touchdowns. This is one of the pound-for-pound best athletes in this class. This dude's explosive. He's dynamic. He made Bruce Feldman's freak list. I think they said he benches 350 pounds, squat like 600. Like, this is a strong physical guy that they used all over the field, Keith. And just watching him, like, when he gets the ball in his hands, like, this is a guy, like, those like get you out of your seat moments. Like, if you give him a clear path to get one-on-one with a defender, like, I was actually very surprised watching him, how fluid his hips were, because he was able to turn, pivot, change directions as a run after catch receiver. But I'm going to tell you what I think defenses and DBs are going to have a problem with him at the Senior Bowl, running in those inside routes, those inside releases, those slants, those end breakers, because he's so strong and he uses his hands well at the line of scrimmage to where if you want to be that handsy physical guy, yeah, go ahead. Like, he's one of those type of receivers. He welcomes that because he wants to be physical too. He's a physical route runner when they do let him play wide receiver. TCU just kind of muddied up this evaluation because they didn't let him naturally develop as a wide receiver, Keith. Coming off the summer, I liked him. And I was like, man, like, if he should be their wide receiver one, bar none. Like, I think he should get 110 targets on the season. And then they came in and they started using them like Deebo Samuel and Cordell Patterson. And I'm like, what are we doing? You know what I mean? Like, I feel like you got running backs that could do this, man. Like, you know what I mean? I get it. He's explosive, but you got running backs that could do this. Get the ball to the most explosive playmaker. He had a catch against UCF where it was like there were two defenders, in the end zone, and he just went up over both of them. Mossed both defenders, came down with the touchdown, and I'm like, yeah, this dude can be a problem down the Mobile.
Yeah, Savion Williams, and this is gonna be my statement. He has the upside to be a first round wide receiver prospect. When you combine the size of him being 6'4", the height of him being 6'4", the size of him being 225, 30 pounds, and then when you watch the short area quickness, he can be one of those guys that when the draft process, majority of about it is athletic testing. If his what looks like on film translates to athletic testing, he's going to be one of the freak athletes of this entire draft. He's a guy that we just talked about with Elic Ayomanor. It's like, hey, he may not be a 4-4 guy. I don't know what Savion runs. He looks like a 4-4, 4-3 guy, though. Like, he looks like he can put it together. He opens up that stride, right? And we down in Indianapolis. He can clock a 4-4-1 and put that down at 6'4". So I agree with you. So in my last mock, and I guess I just said how I feel, right? I put him in the first round, the back end. You put him to the Kansas City Chiefs, and I just think about Andy Reid, right? And all the different things that he can do with a guy like a Savion Williams, right? And even if he wants to put him in the backfield and let him take some handoffs, put him in jet sweep motion, line him in the slot, put him out wide. There's so many different things that if you pair him and Xavier Worthy together, you have a dynamic duo that is very difficult to track and very difficult to understand exactly where they're going to go and what they're going to do. You mentioned Deebo Samuel, DP. I thought about that in their usage, right? The thing is this. You look at the San Francisco 49ers. Would he not be a fit there if you want him to fill the Deebo Samuel role? Because I would say he has just as much short area quickness as a Deebo Samuel, to be completely honest. But he's in a bigger package and he's younger, right? He's 6'4", 230. And I think that's the part that people need to be aware of, that this guy is 6'4", 230. He's a big cat. I talked to one of my guys over at TCU. When was this last week? Because he seen I put him in the first round. He's like, hey, bro. And I asked him, I said, Savion and Quentin Johnston. He was like, Savion is the more freaky athlete. Like, he's the more superior athlete. And I was like, that's all I needed to know. Because obviously I like Quentin Johnson. I still like Quentin Johnson. I think he's playing a good role in what he's doing with the Los Angeles Chargers. So there's just so like Savion he has the opportunity to go to Senior Bowl, make himself a lot of money. What do I want to see, DP? I have questions. I think he has the hip fluidity. It's not like Treylon Burks, because you remember, I questioned that. Remember, I was out on Treylon. I'm like, we're not out, but I had a lot of questions.
Yeah,
I was like, I don't see this as being a first round prospect. I think that Savion can be the route runner. The part that I want to see at the Senior Bowl is the hands, because I don't know if you felt like the same way. I seen him double clutch a couple things, double catch it. And just the opportunity. So I want to see if he's a natural hands catcher or if he's a guy that's going to end up fighting the football, and you may have to look at putting him in the slot and doing different things and draft him as an offensive weapon instead of your pure number one wide receiver. And the last thing I want to say is that I just don't, you want to make sure that this is not a Chase Claypool situation. That's what you want to make sure. Yep.
That's a good call. Yeah, I didn't even think. Yeah, that's a great call, actually, because it's almost similar builds. Chase was a great athlete at that size and everything. I remember, shout out to our guy, Eric Crocker, who co-hosts the Locked On 49ers pod. I remember when I worked with Crocker back during the draft cycle, we thought Chase Claypool should have been a tight end. It was like, man, if he played tight end, like, he's a mismatch, you know what I mean? Yeah, and stuff like that. And it turned out we were kind of right on that. You know what I mean?
No, I was the same way, and that was before I was working at LSU at the time, and that was the combine that I actually went to. We went with LSU. I think that's right before COVID, as a matter of fact. And I remember just watching them run routes and stuff like that in the stadium, and I'm just like, I don't know, right? And I was like, I got to go back to the film and watch this. I'm like, because there's a lot of hype about this guy being a top 50 pick, but I'm like, I have no idea. Then I was watching him fight the football in the combine drills, and I'm like, you can get open all you want, but if you can't catch the football, we got problems, right?
We got a big problem. It's crazy because when you talk about Savion, man, like, Like, shout out to Bruce Feldman. Looking at his note on him as being part of the freaks list, he added 10 pounds coming off of last year. He was 215 last year. He bumped up to 225 for this year. He's hit 10-6 on the broad. He posted a 40-inch vertical. He squatted 600. He benched 355, power clean 350, and he has been clocked in as fast as 22.5 miles per hour on the GPS at full speed. This is also a former high school quarterback who can throw the ball 80 yards down the field. So you're talking about just being able to, this is a do it all in just a humongous package. With Savion, I agree with you. I wrote the same thing down. I was like, he doesn't have natural hands on tape, because it's like, it was the first game of the season. They threw it to him in the flats. It was a clear drop. Against Baylor, it was like a busted coverage. He ran a post. He was wide open. Ball, he went to track it over the shoulder. The ball hits him dead in the hands, drops it. The jump ball I was talking about against UCF, he caught it, but that was one of the plays I think you were talking about, like the double catching. He traps the ball to his body a lot. So this is a guy, I think if you're an NFL team, heck, we could put him and coach him up. Like when we bring that segment back, you want to get him on the jugs machine and just let him get super comfortable with his hand mechanics as a catcher, because with that package of speed, athleticism, power, strength, leaping ability, he can box guys out, man. Like, I can't remember which game it was. He ran a slant. He foot fired. It was like inside the 5. He ran a quick slant, foot fired on the DB. Basically almost made him do a complete 180 zone turn, because that's what, like, that foot quickness, that short area quickness for a guy at 6'4", 225 it's legitimate, man. So I think, Keith, if he goes to the Senior Bowl and he has one of those, he catches everything, he's getting open with routes, and then when you do think, okay, I got him covered, and he goes up like LeBron James the other night against whoever against the Mavericks, where he dunked with the left hand and he just goes over the top of you and takes it off the shelf. This guy could potentially work himself into the first round, especially knowing that he gonna go to the combine and probably pull us like a 4.3. He's the type of athlete we thought we were getting with Quentin Johnson. Quentin Johnson's still a good athlete, but we were kind of expecting QJ to run like a 4.3 last year, Keith.
Yep, 100% with DP. Let's wrap this thing up. We're going back to the West Coast. We're going in the North to West, though, man. With Oregon's wide receiver 1. He played wide receiver 1 for them this year. Tez Johnson. Let's have a conversation about Tez coming up next.
From big upsets to game-winning drives, the NFL playoffs are better with FanDuel, America's #1 sportsbook. Because right now, new customers can bet $5 and get $200 in bonus bets guaranteed. That's $200 in bonus bets, win or lose. The FanDuel app gives you everything you need for live bets, same-game parlays, and so much more. This is not a deal that you want to pass up on. Visit their website and look at the betting lines surrounding your favorite teams and or leagues. To get in on this action, just visit FanDuel.com to join today, and you'll get started with $200 back in bonus bets. Again, you'll get started with $200 back in bonus bets simply by going to FanDuel.com to join today. Again, that's FanDuel.com if you want to join today. Make this playoff season unforgettable with FanDuel. It's an official sportsbook partner of the NFL. Thank you for making Locked On NFL Draft your first listen today and every day. Shout out for being our everydayers. Oregon's wide receiver 1 this season, Keith, was none other than the dynamic slot wide receiver, Tez Johnson, 5'10", 165 pounds on the season, 82 receptions. He did miss a couple games to a nagging little injury. 82 receptions. He caught 81% of his passes, of his targets. 82 receptions, 898 yards receiving, over 11 yards per catch. He had 10 receiving touchdowns. This is a guy that played close to about 79% of his snaps. He aligned in the slot. He only played 16 snaps out wide. He is a pure slot receiver, transferred from having a successful career at Troy, had over 1,100 yards and 10 touchdowns last year with Oregon and Bo Nix. Keith, when you look at Tez Johnson, they did a piece on him talking about how he's basically like almost the adopted brother of Bo Nix.
Yep.
You know, and Denver Bronco fans are like, yeah, bring him to Denver. You know, they want him in they want him in Denver. But man, when I watch him, this dude gets in and out of his breaks with quickness, suddenness, urgency. I think I said this like even last year, coming off of during summer scouting. He's like what I call the option route king. Like you think about if this guy was in a Patriots like Bill Belichick, Tom Brady offense, if he's the slot receiver, he's getting 120 targets. Like he reads, leverages well. He knows where to go off the option route and everything. He's going to be where the quarterback needs him to be. But after the catch, he's explosive and dynamic. I believe he's got return, like either punt and kick return in his background as well, which you kind of see the way he can sift through traffic and navigate things like that. It's really, for a small guy, you don't see him take big hits. You know what I mean? Like you don't see him take those big hits. He knows how to protect his body. For him, it's like, can you be that next Tyler Lockett type of guy? Is that the ceiling for you? But Keith, I'm gonna be honest, because people are going to ask, can he have a Tank Dell type of Senior Bowl?
That's funny you asked that.
And have that type of week.
So that's exactly where I was going. I think for Tez, because of his size, he's going to have to probably have one of those type of performances, right? And even I think Tank, as much as Tank did, Tank was still at a 3rd round pick, I believe. He went in the 3rd, I think, to the Houston Texans. And I think of him, and then I also think of Calvin Austin. Like he's the each Senior Bowl, we have a smaller, shifty, explosive wide receiver that takes over, right? This year, make this your year, right? Let walk out of here, this being a Tez Johnson show, and you being a wide receiver that all the DBs are afraid to step up against, right? Because Tank did it one year, Calvin Austin did it another year. So I look at it from that perspective, DP. And what Calvin's been hurt, but you've seen him make a few plays for the Pittsburgh Steelers this year. He's just been hurt, and I also don't, and I not even think I know that he's not as small as Calvin Austin. So I want to say Tank, but I also want to put Tank in like rarefied air, right? Like that was rare, the things he done, but he has an opportunity to walk away and place himself as a for sure top 100 prospect. Teams that's looking for a slot wide receiver, I think they're different because this guy is bigger, Josh Downs, right? But I think similar roles as far as being a slot wide receiver and getting open.
Yeah, moving the chains, being that quick option for a team. But then it's like, okay, if we get that, because they've used, Oregon does a lot of motion stuff. You see him in orbit motion. If you get him, they put him in the backfield at times too, and they just create mismatches. So you're talking about getting him, like I remember was it the Big Ten? Yeah, it was against Washington last year. It was the second matchup they had in the Pac-12 championship game, and I remember watching him, and they put him. It was like a 3-by-1 set. He was the 3. He wasn't the slot. He was the guy closest to the offensive line. And by being in that alignment, he got matched up on the linebacker. And I was like, this is not going to go well for this backer. Like I knew what type of time it was. And Bo Nix did not waste time. As soon as he got the ball, he let Tez read it and break, and he got it to him. And Tez got like 10, 12 yards after the catch. So it's like, this is a guy you want to get the ball to in space. He can move the chains. And the big thing for him is because of that frame, the one-on-ones are going to be major for him. Because you couldn't get, and that's why, like you said, Tank was rarefied air. They couldn't get hands on Tank. You know what I mean? Like we talked to DBs. I remember talking to DBs like after the first day of practice, and I was like, what was kind of the takeaway from day one? It was like, bro, a lot of these guys didn't want to face Tank. It was like after Tank would route somebody up, guys would kind of look at each other, Tank come back to the line, and nobody was really eager to just walk back to the line to the line of scrimmage. And they're just kind of people like, hey, man, we got to keep the ball rolling. Somebody get up there. And it was like you see big guys, athletic guys, long arm guys, and they just could not touch him. So it's like, don't get me wrong. I think that Tez Johnson is quick as a hiccup, but do you have that ability at the line of scrimmage to make life hell for these DBs when they want to get super physical, right? Like, can you do that? And I think if he can do that, that'll help him. I have a 3rd round grade on him anyway. I think he's a good player. He's got some history with drops over his career and everything. And then of course dealing with handsy physical DBs. The one-on-ones are going to be the biggest thing for him. Like how do you perform when it's you on the island with a DB, and that guy gets on the line of scrimmage, he gets into your face, and he does make contact. How do you counter that? What's your game plan? How do you just handle yourself throughout the week? You know what I mean? Against these physical DBs, because we're going to like these DBs gonna get into your grill. They're not letting your fast, quick, explosive ability just get a free release. They're like, absolutely not. They're going to try and get hands on you. How does Tez Johnson handle that? That's going to be the determination of his 2025 NFL draft stock, in my opinion.
No, I agree. You know, the last thing I want to see, and that's the good thing about the Senior Bowl, right, and these all-star events, is that you get these guys in practice situations, right? So you get more information from them. So in the game, Tez, he's most likely won't align anywhere but the slot, right? But in practice, we should. I feel like we will get some reps of him outside. I just want to see how he's going to look outside, right? Like if his frame is going to be too small, does he have the foot quickness? So, well, you know what? I can keep these guys off of me by beating them with quickness. I can make them fear pressing me because I'm so quick, right? So I want to watch Tez in those moments too, because I think that elevates his role and what he could be and can do for offense. But DP, that wraps up another episode, man, of the Locked On NFL Draft Podcast. I want to end this podcast off by saying shout out to our everydayers. Thank you for tapping in with us each and every single day. I am Keith Sanchez. You can find me on X at The Talent Code. That right there is my guy, my co-host, Mr. Damian Parson. You can find him on X at DP_NFL. And like we like to say, man, y'all come talk to us because we like to talk back.
Go subscribe and follow for free on YouTube or wherever you listen to podcasts to get the latest episode as soon as it is available. Thank you for making Locked On NFL Draft your first listen today and everyday shot, for being our everydayers. Guys, on Monday, we're getting into the recap from the college football playoff, getting the semifinals. Who did what? Who won the game? Who stood out? Moneymaker, bag fumbler, game ball, quarterback grades. We're going to talk about all of that on Monday's show. So come and join the conversation again on Monday on the Locked On Podcast Network, your team every day.